now contained and that there is no active threat to the community any longer. We've got some brand new sound from witnesses in just a moment here that are describing just how panicked of a scene that has been. The president has also been briefed. He just posted on Truth Social that he has been fully briefed on the tragic shooting in Minneapolis, in Minnesota. The FBI quickly responded and they are on the scene. The White House will continue to monitor this terrible situation. Please join me in praying for everyone involved. And we do have that witness sound now that we want to play for you here.
So all the parents were on the left side, and so he was on the left side. So there must have been sporadic gunfire going on. He said it looked like just a normal Sunday mass. So it was full, of people and children. So.
And how did he get out?
He just ran, when the fire, he said it seemed like it went on for eternity, but when it stopped, he ran out of the building.
When did you first hear about this?
So we live about 2 blocks from here. I was on a call. All the windows of our home were open. I know what gunfire sounds like, and I could tell. I was shocked. I said, "There's no way that could be gunfire." There was so much of it. So it was sporadic. So it was a semi-automatic. It seemed like a rifle.
A lot of gunfire there, according to that witness. Let's go now to correspondent CB Cotton. She's got the latest. CB, do we know anything about victims?
Hey, Aisha, well, we're continuing to learn more details about this disturbing, heartbreaking tragedy on the first week of school for students at Annunciation Catholic School in South Minneapolis. Before we get into details surrounding this, I just want to go over the reaction. Governor Tim Walz writing, quote, on X early this morning, "I've been briefed on a shooting at Annunciation Catholic School and will continue to provide updates as we get more information. The Bureau of Criminal Apprehension and State Patrol are on scene. I'm praying for our kids and teachers whose first week of school was marred by this horrific act of violence." So Aisha, reports about the shooting first came in just before 8:30 a.m. local time. Our Fox affiliate in Minneapolis reports the Annunciation Catholic School has students for kindergartners through 8th graders, and the school indeed started on Monday. The Fox affiliate also reports that Mass is held on Wednesdays at 8:15 local time there, and students were reportedly in Mass at the time of the shooting. So the Star Tribune, which is a pretty big publication in this region, it's reporting some disturbing, heartbreaking details. So I do want to warn that what you're about to hear is going to be very, very upsetting. The outlet said it spoke to a parent who was sitting in a back pew when Mass started at 8:15 local time, and that's when a shooter, this person reported a shooter opening fire outside the building with a semi-automatic weapon. The outlet also quotes the parent as saying this, quote, "He just pepper sprayed through the stained glass windows into the building, 50 to 100 shots. The outlet also said the parent reported witnessing 2 casualties. So a reunification zone has been set up for families of children at the school, and right now emergency first responders are urging parents to go to this area if they have any questions. You can imagine, Aisha, that this morning some parents will be getting perhaps some of the worst news of their lives, and of course we're going to be keeping all of these people in our thoughts and our prayers this morning as details continue to emerge about this horrific tragedy, again in the first week of school for students at Annunciation School here in South Minneapolis. I want to send it back over to you.
Okay, CB Cotton live for us. CB, thank you for that update. Let's bring in now Ted Williams, former D.C. homicide detective and defense attorney and a Fox News contributor. Ted, good of you to join us on this breaking news. You know, we're watching the pictures here, just heartbreaking, and you can see the worried just sick on their faces of the parents as that mom kisses her young son. We're talking about kids who are 3 to 4 years old in preschool all the way up to 13 preteens in 8th grade. I cannot imagine the trauma these kids are facing right now as they walk out of there wondering, what just went on here. And I'm thinking about what the police are doing right now, because we are seeing so many folks come out And I'm thinking perhaps they're going classroom by classroom and making sure that there's no other shooter involved here. As we know, one of those shooters is now contained. Can you just bring us up to speed as to what law enforcement are probably doing right now as these kids and these parents come out of that school?
Well, let me just say my heart goes out to all of the parents that have to face this kind of uncertain trauma there in Minneapolis. What normally happens under these sad circumstances, Aisha, is that a crime scene has already been set up by law enforcement. As we know, there's also a reunification center. Normally, there's protocol in place. In America now, schools all around the country prepare, unfortunately, for these kinds of incidents to take place. So at the reunification center, the parents are meeting with many of the students here who have been, as you said, very traumatized. We see students walking around that school, and we can see that they are traumatized. These students, unfortunately, will be perhaps traumatized the rest of their life by what is taking place here. But the crime scene now is being processed. We know that the shooter has been neutralized, and we don't know if the shooter is alive or dead. That information hopefully will come out to us very shortly here. But this is unfortunately another day in America where we have a very tragic incident where perhaps there are casualties. As we've reported that there are casualties, but we're going to wait, I believe, to get some formal information from law enforcement as to what is taking place there in Minneapolis.
Yeah, and we're watching here some more families come out of that building, Annunciation School, a Catholic school in Minneapolis, just tiny, tiny kids. I mean, that's the hardest part about this, just looking at these faces, and some parents smiling now because these are the lucky souls. And like you said, we don't know yet what carnage is inside that building right now, because by the witnesses that are talking to reporters, it sounds like that place may have been riddled with bullets. I mean, there were some folks who thought that there was construction work happening because of how much gunfire there was. Ted, what does that tell you about a possible weapon, and what might have been going through the shooter's mind to just let it all out?
Well, we know that on Wednesday morning at this Catholic school, there is a mass. And quite naturally, at a mass, there's quite a bit of individuals that have gathered. And it seems to me that while we don't know a great deal, or we really don't know anything about the shooter at this stage, there's a possibility that he or she purposely planned this shooting because of the mass that was taking place. It appears when we listen to one of the witnesses that the shooter may very well have been armed with a semi-automatic weapon. Quite naturally, we're going to have to wait and see. I'm sure law enforcement is going to give us that information. But I just want you to think about it. These kids, they got up, they were on their way to the first week of school here just to enjoy being children with other children, and to have to come under this kind of trauma where now maybe, because we really don't know, that some of their classmates will never be here or seen alive on this earth again. That is certainly something that these young children are going to have to live with the rest of their lives. And this is the tragedy of this, not only for those who have died and the mothers and fathers and the relatives that have ran to that school to see what was going on.
All right, Ted Williams, thank you for joining us. I just want to give folks at home a quick update from, it looks like the Richfield, Minnesota police is now reporting possible 20 victims which is just catastrophic amount of people and potentially children included in this victims list. Again, 20 victims being reported by the City of Richfield Police Department there at Annunciation Church. Let's bring in now Bill Malugin, who's going to join me now in this breaking news coverage. Just heartbreaking scene here as we're watching these parents, Bill, come out. And like I said earlier, these are the lucky souls that are able to hold on to their kids and reunite with those kids. We're seeing a young girl right there just crying. And it's hard to think what these kids are going through right now.
Yeah, unimaginable, Aisha. Good to be with you. Excuse me. Horrible situation. You were just talking about that update from the Richfield Police Department. That's matching up with what I'm hearing now. Since I got off air about 10 minutes ago, I was shooting out some texts, and again, what I'm being told is a significant amount of victims. Richfield Police confirming that officers on scene are reporting 20 victims. There's been some questions about what does it mean with the shooter being, quote, contained. I'm told by a federal law enforcement source that the shooter is, quote, down. I don't know if that means he's dead or if he's arrested and in custody, but I'm being told the shooter is down. If we go a little bit deeper into that post from the Richfield Police Department, on top of saying that officers reported 20 victims, they're saying that the shooter was a man dressed in all black, armed with a rifle. That was reported at the scene. And again, this has been called out as a mass casualty response for EMS. So Aisha, we know how it is with these unfortunate shootings. A lot of the initial numbers are going to be wrong when they come out, so we're avoiding those numbers. But we do have it from Richfield Police that officers on scene initially reported 20 victims. Now, we don't know what they mean by victims in terms of injuries or any potential fatalities here. We're going to wait to hear on that. But Paul, you and I were just talking about this moments ago. We're now hearing a number from police that this shooting is shaping up to be, unfortunately, as bad as we were hearing about an hour ago.
Yeah, it really, really does. And one of the things my mind goes to is the capabilities of EMS, the EMTs, the paramedics these days. One of the reasons that we have lower homicide numbers in many of the cities across the country these days is because the paramedics have gotten so good. Not only do they get there fast, but they're very good. They've just got great institutional knowledge. They're really, really underappreciated as part of the law enforcement response, first responder effort. And, you know, they generally, you know, they're not really thought about when people talk about first responders and how underpaid and underappreciated they are. So more power to them, because it sounds like in this circumstance, they are really going to be the unsung heroes. We have 20 victims. I'm sure that was said cognizantly by law enforcement, because they likely don't know at this point what the final count is of those who may have expired and those who are going to pull through. All of that's going to come down to EMS and their abilities right now.
So, Paul, we continue to look at these live shots outside of the school where we see police and EMS milling about. From your experience, take us inside. What is going on in there right now with this crime scene?
So right now what you have is the sort of second phase of this whole thing. They know that the shooter is down. Off scene, there are going to be detectives who are scraping at the life of the shooter very, very diligently, assuming that person is identified. Chances are almost certainly that he or she is, but we have to see. So that's going on off scene. At the scene now, as we said, we have a crime scene. A thing like this could be a mobile crime scene, which creates all kinds of extra headaches. Doesn't matter. You have to contain the whole area. You got to make sure you get everybody out of there that doesn't need to be there, now that the circumstances are stabilized. And you got to get the crime scene techs in there, because, again, this could come down to a prosecution at some point. And while there doesn't seem to be any question as to who did this, you never know where this sort of thing is going to take you. So the general rule is you make the crime scene larger rather than smaller, and if you don't belong there, you got to get them out, irrespective of rank. And so sometimes you have people who are at the supervisor level who want to help, they want to do the right thing, they're there, they want to walk through the scene and see what happens, see if there's anything they can do. And you have to get them out, and that's just all there is to it. And you have to process that scene as if it's all going to trial. You have to assume that at this stage.
And Paul, it looks like we're going to be getting some more concrete information shortly here, getting reports that there is going to be a press conference at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time, so about 15 minutes from now. We will obviously be taking that live whenever that happens. So obviously we'll be hoping to get some more concrete details from law enforcement and first responders as to what exactly happened here, and the reports of the 20 victims in this shooting, getting notes that media is preparing to set up for that press conference. So again, 15 minutes from now, we'll be keeping an eye on that. Paul, what do you expect to hear from that press conference? I mean, the initial call for this, it sounds like went out around 8:30 a.m. or before 9 a.m., so we're talking, it's only been about 3 hours. What kind of initial information do you expect police will be willing to release in about 15 minutes from now?
Well, the first thing they're going to do is that, look, at this point now, you're not speaking to the families as the person giving the briefing. This goes to what we were talking about earlier on the air with Dana Perino, which is that part of the incident commander's job here is to recognize you're going to have to talk to the public at large, and that's what's about to happen. And the first thing you want to do is tamp down concerns about there being any further threat. All right, that's what's on the mind of other city residents and other people around the country, is this part of something larger? So you want to mitigate that instantly as soon as you can and try to tamp that down. And then unfortunately, you're going to have to go into numbers. You're going to have to go what the body count is here, for lack of a better term. And you're going to want to know, how many people still may pull through, how many are at the hospital, what we're looking at here, the contours of this event in terms of, was it targeted? Is it ideological? What were we dealing with here? And again, as I said, you're speaking at this point to really the entire nation. In many ways, the entire world, I'm sure, are going to be hearing about something as horrific as this. But certainly the people of Minneapolis, the people in that community, and then coast to coast, America, because you want to really know on the first day of school here, these are America's kids, man, and you want to know what happened.
Yeah. Paul, go ahead and stand by for us. In the meantime, we're just getting a post from the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office out there. They say, at this time, quote, there is no immediate threat, but we're urging all residents to stay out of the area. So that would match up with what our law enforcement sources are telling us, that this shooter is, quote, down. Again, we don't know if that means the shooter is deceased or in custody, but law enforcement out there now saying there is no longer an active threat to that community, which you can kind of see from the body language of everybody out there walking around as we continue to see what appears to be parents showing up and walking out with young children. Going to go ahead and send it back to my colleague, Aisha Hasni. Aisha?
Thank you, Bill. And yes, we don't know a whole lot of information about this shooter as of right now. Just digging in a little bit more from the Richfield Police Department, and the update that they just gave us is that it was a man dressed in all black and armed with a rifle that was reported being seen at the scene there. So hopefully we'll get some more information from authorities when that press conference happens. Let's bring in now Chris Swecker, former Assistant FBI Director. And Chris, we also have that update now about 20 victims. Of course, we don't know if that means that those are just people that were injured. We don't have a number on potential fatalities. We don't even know if there were any fatalities just yet. So we want to urge caution on that number right now, that 20 victim number. But the FBI is on the scene. They're assisting local authorities. And I guess tell us, what is the priority right now? What are they looking for? Obviously, they're going to try to identify this guy, if they have him in custody, if he's still alive. But take us through how the investigation is underway right now.
Yeah, good morning. It's beyond tragic. I mean, this is the parents' worst nightmare. I packed off 8 grandkids to school yesterday, or saw them go off to school. It's a nightmare, and our hearts go out to them. This is a situation where the FBI would be in a support role, and a command post has to be up and organized as quickly as possible, and roles have to be assigned, and information has to flow to one place and one place only, instead of going across separate channels to different places, so they can see, determine exactly what happened. Is there another threat? Let's identify, take care of the victims, of course, first and foremost, and then try to identify the shooter. Just again, is there another threat somewhere? Let's get to the house. Let's get to his devices. Let's get to whatever vehicle got him there, whatever means he got there. A lot of things are happening at one time. And it's the chaos is it's a lot of chaos at the beginning of this, but it'll get organized. It's by the time they have a press conference, they will be somewhat organized, at least enough to know and give us a picture of what happened. But this is tragic. I do school security assessments, and this is your worst nightmare.
You know, a federal source is now telling us there in Minneapolis that they are confirming the estimates of the 15 to 20 injured. The number of fatalities may be lower, but again, we don't have any confirmation on fatalities as of right now. So again, cautioning that number, but we have confirmed the 15 to 20 injured. So far, we don't know the age group of those injured. Of course, there were a lot of kids inside this school, and very young kids, as you saw earlier this morning, Chris. Just heartbreaking to see just how tiny those kids were, and just the face of innocence, really, as those moms and dads grabbed a hold of them and took them out of the school. And you can't imagine how grateful they are and glad they're able to hold on to their kids. As far as, potentially why this location, this is a church, of course we know that. This is also a school. What would authorities be looking at right now to figure out, why that would have been a target?
Yeah, this is an incredibly complex security challenge when you have a lot of people, young people, students, gathered in one place. When they're in classrooms, if you have a good security plan, you can seal them off. Ideally, with one push of a button, you can seal off all the doors. With the young ones, you always want to lock them down. They're not suitable for run, hide, fight protocols. They have to be locked down. So in this case, was this particular mass specifically targeted, and why? What was this person's motivation? I mean, it doesn't help the victims at this point, but it helps understand, is there an additional threat? And why was this person affiliated with that school, with that church? Does this person have a beef or an imagined beef with that church? And were there early warning signs? And that's one of the first things I recommend, is having that early warning system. If someone is exhibiting signals or red flags, or a threat has come in, you have to have a multidisciplinary team that reviews that threat and determines what the appropriate prevention response is or intervention is. We saw that in Parkland, where the opportunities were missed there. Not saying that happened here, but the police and the law enforcement investigators are looking at all of that right now.
So we are awaiting this briefing that's going to happen in about less than 10 minutes here, just at 11:30 at the bottom of the hour. And we're looking at a Hennepin County Sheriff who is expected to be there. The Minneapolis Mayor, Jacob Fry, is expected to be there, and folks from the FBI and the police department as well, and hoping to get some more information. I believe the Minnesota Governor, Tim Walz, will be there too, hoping to get some more information about the details of these victims as well, Chris. As of right now, I imagine there were a lot of witnesses that either heard what happened or saw what happened, and so you have to think that they have a lot of information that they can hand over to the police. And what kinds of questions and what kinds of information do you think police are hoping to get from those witnesses?
Yeah, I mean, they have to be identified first and segregated from each other, and at least 2 agents or investigators have to do the interviews. So there's a lot to do at one time while the response is taking place, while the evidence technicians are roping off the area. So they just want to see what kind of weapon was used. Was the shooter saying anything when this person came in? Was a person specifically targeted? So all those interviews are taking place, and I can guarantee you, if he came in a vehicle, they've probably identified that by now. And by all accounts, the shooter is down, so to speak. So maybe some identification on that person. And I think by now they probably have identified the shooter, and if they're not at their house, they'll be there, or his or her house, they'll be there right away. So a lot going on. We've seen this before. Unfortunately, it's all too frequent in this country. But these officers are trained. The first thing, as I mentioned, is getting information flowing to one place. and getting all that witness information, all that forensic information, all the videos if there are some. And I would bet that they do have video there at the school. I can't imagine they wouldn't. So all of that is being reviewed as we speak.
And you hate to think about it this way, but a lot of those little kids may have been witnesses too. We just saw a young boy there being carried off by his father, wearing a little space backpack, and it just, you know, hits home for a lot of parents, I think, that are watching right now as back to school happens this week, and has, you know, a lot of kids have gone back to school, and this is your worst nightmare, is what we're watching unfold here on our screens right now. Chris Swecker, thanks for walking us through what investigators on the scene are doing for us right now. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Bill, I'll hand it over to you.
And Aisha, just now we're getting in reaction from Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, who represents the district in Minneapolis where this apparent mass shooting took place. She says, quote, "I am beyond heartbroken over the tragic news of the shooting at Annunciation Catholic School in Minneapolis. I'm praying for all the families impacted by this horrific tragedy. I will continue to closely monitor the situation and provide updates." We are also hearing from a local hospital out there. That would be Hennepin Healthcare. They posted on X, quote, "We are caring for patients from the shooting that occurred this morning. Please watch this feed and other social media sites for updates." If anybody would like to follow that feed, that is at Hennepin HC, so Hennepin Healthcare. We want to bring in now retired NYPD Lieutenant Joe Cardinale. Joe, give us your thoughts to what you've been watching this morning, as we're now about 5 minutes away from what will be the first scheduled press conference here.
I think it's just unbelievable that we have this happening right into the school season, and it's unbelievable that what we're speaking about, almost 20 casualties. I'm just praying, Bill, that this is mostly glass injuries from individuals spraying the outside. And the fact that he is on the outside, I think Chris laid it out pretty well. The fact that he's on the outside, maybe he could not get entry into the building, and he did spray those windows from the outside. So, like I said, I'm praying that this is mostly, injuries from glass, from debris and everything. And we won't know this until the press conference comes. And we'll see how many people were removed and how many are still there. So it's going to be an active crime scene, and that's why they're containing it to that area, letting everybody else that can go get out of there. But I'm just, like I said, I'm just praying that this is minimal.
Yeah, and it's a good point that you make, that we don't know the severities of the injuries here. What we do know, if we reset here, is that multiple law enforcement sources, both state and federal, are telling Fox News that between 15 and 20 people were injured as a result of this shooting. So there are 15 to 20 victims. Now, a breakdown of those victims, we don't know. You were just mentioning a lot of chaos happens during a mass shooting. There could be stampedes, there could be broken glass, there could be people tripping. So we do not know the extent of any injuries. We just know that, according to multiple sources and the local police department out there, 15 to 20 people were hurt due to whatever happened inside of this building there. Again, we're a few minutes away from the scheduled press conference, so we're hoping to get more details there. But as we continue to talk to these different sources and try to figure out what happened inside of that school building, we do not have any fatalities confirmed at this point. So as people see the numbers and hear the numbers of 20 victims, yes, that sounds bad initially off the front. But again, we do not have a breakdown of what those 20 victims mean. They could be anywhere from minor injuries to serious injuries. The hospital out there tweeting that they are caring for some of the victims. So obviously you're going to have people who are transported to the hospital out there, and we will wait for the update in terms of the severity of the injuries. But Joe, we did hear from witnesses and from other people who spoke to the media out there immediately after the shooting that they heard a whole lot of gunshots in rapid succession, and that one witness thought it was actually somebody doing roof work because there was so much banging going on. What does that say to you? That, there were a couple witnesses who said, they're familiar with guns, and it sounded like the person had a chance to reload at least one time, and it was just nonstop bang, 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 bang.
I mean, they're going to have, they'll find out if they have this person is down. I'm sure the weapon is there. They'll find out whether it was double magazines, dual magazines taped together. They have that capacity as well. But this person had intimate knowledge of this school, and I'm sure he has some kind of connection to the school to know that mass is going on at that particular time, and he can't get into that building and goes to the outside and creates this carnage that he committed. And just the fact that people are praying at church, it upsets me to a degree, because every Sunday when we go to church these days, and every Sunday at 8 o'clock in the morning, I worry about the people around. I watch people in church all the time, and it's supposed to be a safe haven. It's supposed to be a time of peace, of prayer. And this individual uses this opportunity to get everybody into one location and do whatever he had to do for whatever reason. I'm sure we'll find out later on what his connection was to the school, to the church.
And Joe, I reported earlier that I was being told the shooter is down. We have now confirmed that. Our colleague David Spunt, our Justice Department correspondent, confirming that a law enforcement source is telling him that the shooter, yes, is confirmed to be deceased. It's unclear if the shooter is deceased as a result of a self-inflicted gunshot wound or if he was taken down by the police. But we've been hearing from the police out there that there is no longer an active threat, and you can kind of glean that just from looking at the exteriors of the building here. It did not seem to be, officers running around urgently. We now know, according to multiple law enforcement sources to Fox, that the shooter is down, and according to David's federal source, that shooter is deceased. Your thoughts?
Well, I'm hoping that, maybe there was somebody on the inside, that they did have an armed person inside the school that did take action. If not, it's very likely he took his own life, and that, he planned this to the point that, once again, like somebody else did in other shootings that we've covered recently, that he planned this is what I'm going to do, then I'm going to take my own life. Or he was just waiting for the police to take him out, but that probably did not happen. We don't know what the response time was, if there was an officer on the premises for the school, if that's standard procedure over there, if it's an off-duty type of thing, or if it's armed security that the school maintains over there. If it is, I highly recommend that for a lot of areas. Doesn't have to be a uniform presence, just somebody that can make that not such a soft target, make it a harder target.
All right, Joe Cardinale, go ahead and stand by for us if you don't mind. We appreciate your time. We are also standing by for this imminent press conference, which we were told was scheduled for 11:30 Eastern time. Obviously, sometimes these things aren't going to run on time, but you can see in the bottom right of your screen, we do have a live camera there waiting for those officials to walk out and begin. Aisha, going to go ahead and send it back to you.
All right. Well, hopefully we'll get some new updates and new information to sort of help paint the picture of what happened this morning, this horrific morning in Minneapolis at this Catholic school, at this Catholic church. I want to bring back in Paul here, and I want you to pick up where Joe left off here. I thought it was interesting that Joe said that this suspect, the shooter that we now know is dead, had some kind of potential connection to the school, had to have, because when you think about when school started about 8 o'clock this morning, and then mass started shortly after about 8:15, and to know that there's going to be a large group of people, probably adults and some kids, inside a small space, you would have to have some intimate knowledge of the schedule of that school.
Yes, you would. At the very least, a person will have to have looked into when the mass is going to be held. But if this person, in fact, was targeting the children, then, in fact, he would have to have known that the school body was going to be going into the church to start their school year with a mass. And so it does argue that there's something targeted here. Is there a particular edge against the Catholic Church, or is it this specific school? There was a shooting yesterday in Minneapolis, and again, I want to be clear that this is speculative, but 7 people shot, including one who died, and it was across the street from another Catholic school in Minneapolis. Now, are these two things related? I'm sure it's one of the things that are going through the minds of the police investigators out there right now. So could have something that's actually even larger than the immediate incident here. But these are all the things that the police are chasing down now. They have a little bit of time to get their legs under themselves now that we know that the shooter is down. But they're going to want to know, is he part of something larger? Did he have any accomplices? As we've been hearing, they're almost certainly by now at his home. He's likely identified, and they're going to be going through his phones, his computers, all of the stuff that we always hear about in these incidents.
Unfortunately, this is not the first school shooting we've all had to cover, and over the years, we've talked a lot about how schools, are these soft targets, and Some schools across the country have hardened their buildings, and I've been in some of those where it's very, very difficult to get in if you don't have an appointment, if you don't have your ID. You know, you have to go through a lot of different steps before you can get into the actual building. And of course, a lot of schools, and my own when I was growing up, had resource officers and people that patrolled, you know, surrounding the property of the school. By what you know so far, you know, what we've learned so far this morning about this school and this church, what can you tell us about how soft this target was?
Well, look, a church is different from a school, right? So even if the school had some protocols, this seems to have occurred in the church, and the shooter maybe starting outside the church. We don't know the entire contours of what occurred. Did he get inside? 20 victims, you know, it sounds like maybe he got inside. Hopefully he didn't. As Joe Cardinale was saying, maybe it's just he was shooting from outside, but there are reported fatalities, and so I would argue he got in. So, look, there have been a number of incidents down through the last couple of years where, let's call them resource officers, let's call them armed guards, outside houses of worship, who managed to mitigate something that could have been a lot worse. It is unfortunately dawning on the public that just because it's a church or a mosque or a synagogue, that you need some security. And you know, we've seen it particularly at some synagogue locations around the world, that they have begun to hire armed guards so that the worshipers feel secure. It's a fact of life these days. It's one we're better off recognizing and embracing than trying to ignore. That's where we are these days, and it's not just America. There's been some incidents overseas that have been every bit as horrific. So I think that's where we are. It's not just schools, it's houses of worship, but certainly a house of worship attendant to a school. And those protocols need to be there. And as we were saying earlier, myself and Agent Swecker, you know, it would be good to have, I think, off-duty cops or retired cops who missed a mission, want to be involved in something like this. They tend to be good with kids. You have to deal with children a lot in law enforcement. And I think it's something that we need to look at programmatically, because this, you know, it just can't continue. And you also want to say to yourself, should this person have had a gun? I know very staunch Second Amendment advocates who totally agree with red flag laws. Crazy people should not have guns, period, end of story. Your right to a gun is not universal, just like even the First Amendment, are literally the foundation of our nation's Constitution. It's not sacrosanct. There are limits on it, and if you trip a red flag law, you don't get the gun, period, end of story. And that's something that also needs to be muscularized, and I say that as a believer in the Second Amendment.
So as I'm watching this picture here from Minneapolis, a live footage that we're getting right now, I haven't seen a whole lot of parents and kids come out in the last couple of minutes here. So it appears that they've been able to clear the building and the church, and now the investigatory work is beginning. I do have a statement here from Children's Minnesota now, hospital, a group in that city that's treating some of the victims, and they write that Children's Minnesota is aware of the recent tragic shooting in Minneapolis. Our teams are trained to respond in times of crisis and are fully prepared to care for impacted children. Currently, 6 children are admitted to our hospital for care. We will not share more details to respect the privacy of our patients and families. So 6 kids there at Children's Minnesota Hospital, and I believe a few more potential victims are at another nearby county hospital. And so the number right now we're getting, Paul, is 15 to 20 victims. Again, as Bill has cautioned, and we're all cautioning our viewers here, we don't know the extent of these injuries, and certainly do not know if there's been any fatality. We do know kids are now involved in this number of victims, but again, do not know yet the extent of their injuries. Could it be bruises, broken bones? We just don't know yet, and hopefully we'll get that update in a few moments when we get this press conference underway in Minneapolis. We'll take that live for you as soon as that happens. Paul, as far as the shooter goes, and I think the most striking thing that I've heard so far this morning were these witness accounts of this shooter just spraying gunfire, and you know, these bullets coming out and it sounding like almost construction work, where it was even hard to believe that it was gunfire. What does that tell you?
Well, I think that one of the things we can glean from that, as Lieutenant Cardinale was saying earlier, is that the person had planned what happened here quite meticulously and was very cognizant of being able to reload. Now, we don't know if they had like a banana clip or something, clips taped together, the kind of stuff that you can do to augment your firepower. But very clearly, this was something that was done with a great deal of intent, and somebody who, did the research, who knew that this was going to be a location that was, for lack of a better term, and I apologize for this, target rich. This is what this person wanted to do. And so when you tell me that they heard so much gunfire and then there was a pause and then it repeated and it sounded like construction work, this argues somebody who really had the intent and very clearly was willing to die in doing it. As we've recognized, we don't know if it was a self-inflicted wound or if somebody fired back. I would lean towards self-inflicted just because it sounds like it took a while for the shooting to stop. And so had there been an armed guard or somebody who could interdict it, you'd like to think they would have got there quicker. But who knows? Maybe there was a first responder in the area that we don't know about yet.
Paul, I think you're the best person to ask this question. I'm getting so many text messages right now from moms and dads and folks that are about to send their kids to school. It's back to school time. I mean, everyone's going back to school. They had a great, awesome summer, and the kids are excited to see their friends again. Maybe they're going to make new friends, and they've got nervousness and a little bit of anxiety, but excitement. And for the moms and dads that are watching this and are horrified, and the worst thoughts are going through their heads and they're scared, what should they be doing? What conversations should they be having with their kids? Do they need to come up with a plan of action? Not all kids get to take their cell phones to school, especially not kids, this young. And what conversations should they be having with their school officials right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think the latter is the more salient thing. The conversations between parents and children is going to be a very intimate thing that's going to be obviously decided by the parents. This is not something that government should be imposing. Parents should know how to pick that up, and if they don't know, there are resources for that. I think, to your question, the more manageable situation, something that we can tease out a little bit more, is a conversation between parents and school officials. And this goes to some of the stuff that we've been speaking about already. Are there protocols in place? Are there notification protocols in place if something like this happens, to let parents know what's going on? Is there a mass text situation? What's the security like? Is the security up to par? Has a review been done? Since when has a review been done? All the questions that you would have if you were sitting where a school administrator is and you want to be able to say, our school is as secure as it can be without turning it into a prison for the students here. Unfortunately, you're just going to have to deal with that. There's a continuum. You want security without it being onerous, because it is supposed to be a learning environment. You don't want it to be oppressive. But unfortunately, this is something that parents and administrators are going to have to face up to. There has to be a meeting of the minds so that all of this stuff is worked out ahead of time, because this is not something you want to learn on the fly.
No, you don't. Just awful, awful situation, and no parent and no child should have to live through this. Paul Morrow, thank you for joining us. Send it back to Bill.
Yeah, Aisha, we continue to stand by for that imminent press conference. Again, authorities initially announced it at 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. We're now told that press conference is obviously running behind schedule, which is completely understandable given that everything they're having to deal with on the scene out there. We'll continue to stand by for that. You can see in the bottom right of the screen, we'll wait for that imminent press conference. At the same time, we're getting in some reaction from a Minneapolis City Councilwoman. She represents Minneapolis Ward 7. Her name is Katie Cashman. And she reports that the shooter walked in and shot multiple children and staff, listen to this, while they attended morning mass. So according to that councilwoman, she says this shooter came in and shot children and staff members while they were attending morning mass. Again, that the Annunciation Church, also Annunciation School, it's a K-8. It's also a church as well. So horrible to hear that that happened during mass. We still have Joe Cardinale standing by for us, retired NYPD lieutenant. Joe, give us your initial reaction to hearing that. We heard Aisha's reporting earlier that the Children's Hospital there says they're treating 6 children. We're now finding out from this councilwoman that this shooter evidently got in there during morning mass.
Well, once again, Bill, I based my assessment before on your witness that said that the person was outside shooting through the stained glass windows to the inside. So if this person, in fact, did get into the school, then once again, there was no challenge to that person at the door to walk in armed with this rifle. And I have to tell you, Bill, that I've addressed this with, some schools, particularly Catholic schools, and the pushback that we got at one time from parents was they did not want armed people in the schools, the whole 9 yards. And this is right after Uvalde as well. And the one thing I could tell you is this: they tamped it down by having people in the school that were armed, not in uniform, in like dress shirts and everything, but there was an armed presence in the schools. And a lot of schools have adapted that idea of bringing people into the school, as Paul said, former police department, people that work for the police department that are familiar with the area, familiar with dealing with schools, familiar with, dealing with children. So that's critical, moving forward with this, that, there are plans in place right now. Now, in Uvalde, they actually had teachers and janitors and everybody. You never know who you're running into when you go into these schools now, because people do arm themselves down there. And you can thank Sheriff Wayburn for that, because we discussed the Minuteman Project right after that for people to respond to the rural areas like that as quick as they can. So as much as these things are in place, they still have people like this that get through, that know the schools, and they're on a mission.
And ever since Columbine, law enforcement has changed their tactics when they respond to these mass shootings. It's no longer show up and set up a perimeter. It's you go in fast, and you take that threat on directly. Obviously, that didn't happen in Uvalde, which is, I covered that shooting, probably the worst thing I've ever covered in my entire career. We saw law enforcement just kind of sit out there and wait. Talk about what it would be like for these initial officers getting on scene for this call. When that initial radio call goes out that, hey, we've got a shooting at a church, at a school, and you're one of those very first units responding, what's that adrenaline rush like, not knowing what you're walking into?
They have their protocol set up. The uniformed personnel have their protocol set up, and they'll know in advance if there is somebody stationed at that school. Sometimes they have officers assigned, uniform officers assigned to that, so they work in conjunction with that. That being absent, if that is the case over here, and they don't have anybody, you're going in there and you're expecting the worst, and you're systematically going through that. You're getting people out at the same time, but you're moving towards the threat. You're never moving away from it. You're going right to the threat. As you stated in Uvalde, it didn't work that way. They just sat back, whereas they should have been in there addressing the threat. And I think that's what everybody bases their response on today is you will go in, you will address the threat. Cops go in there, Bill, we know we're going to draw fire. We know that we're going to be in the line of fire. That's what we do. That's what trained officers do, and that's why you have the specialty units, like in New York City, emergency service units are trained to go in there and address these situations. And like I just stated, there are protocols for this, and they do mock trials with this as well. They get everybody on board. Out on Long Island, they'll have mock trials. They'll have the police department. They'll have the ambulance. They'll have the fire department. Everybody that could be standing by is there, and this is the way they address these things. And sadly, no matter how many times you prepare for this, every incident has some new component to it that they have to adapt to.
All right, Joe, go ahead and stand by for us. In the meantime, we're getting a trio of reactions in from top leaders in Congress. Speaker Johnson, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer all putting out statements on X saying they've been briefed, they're aware of this, this is a horrible tragedy, and they're praying for the victims. Hakeem Jeffries taking it a little bit further, saying, quote, weapons of war have no place in our neighborhoods, streets, or schools. Again, we don't even know what kind of weapon was used in this incident here. We'll stand by and wait. Again, that press conference has been delayed. We do have a live camera waiting for it. So as soon as those officials walk up and start delivering those remarks, we will take it live. Aisha, we'll send it back to you.
And the Vice President, J.D. Vance, also, Bill, is reacting as well on X, saying the White House is monitoring the situation in Minneapolis. He says, join all of us in praying for the victims. Of course, J.D. Vance converting to Catholicism not too long ago. His thoughts and prayers also with the victims of this Minneapolis just awful shooting here. We're awaiting that live press conference been delayed a bit here, and so we're watching the live feed, and we'll bring that to you as soon as it happens. We're expecting to hear from the Hennepin County Sheriff, the Minneapolis Mayor, the FBI Minneapolis Special Agent in charge, the Police Chief of Minneapolis, the Richfield Police Department Chief. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is expected to be there as well as a representative from the ATF and Congressman Ilhan Omar. We've got some new witness sound that we're getting into our newsroom, so let's go ahead and play that out for you.
Heart when you hear about something like this, especially at a school you attended?
It breaks my heart, makes me sick to my stomach, knowing that there's probably people I know that are either injured or maybe they were even killed. It doesn't make me feel safe at all at this community that I've been a part of for so long. So me and my friends were talking like this is like our version of 9/11 because we didn't grow up during 9/11. So this is like this with our community. That's what it feels like.
Let's bring back in Chris Swecker, former Assistant FBI Director. Chris, I'm not sure if you know the special agent in charge in Minneapolis, Alvin M. Winston Sr., but I wonder if you can tell us what do you think his priority is right now and what he's thinking and the plan of action for the FBI and how they're assisting local law enforcement. Are they, you think, helping with trying to figure out who this guy was and what his motive was? Do you think they're at his house already?
I do think so. You know, from an FBI perspective, their first look and their jurisdictional basis, you know, to be a primary law enforcement agency would be if it was an act of terrorism. You don't know early on in a situation like this. I mean, back in the aftermath of 9/11, we would have assumed it and then worked backwards from there. But in this case, they're there trying to work jointly. It takes a little bit of tact and diplomacy to sort through who's in charge at the early stages, but it usually will be the local police department. And they will provide their evidence response team, which are the best in the business. They're equipped for this. They'll work alongside the local police department in trying to set up the crime scene, seal it off, help organize with it. They have a great lead management system, if you will, a command post type support system that they can implement if needed, so that all the leads, all the information goes to one place and it's not going willy-nilly in every direction. You need a good, clear picture as quickly as possible of what happened. But the identity of the shooter is important, and we have to determine if there is anyone else out there. You know, is this a plot? You know, that is, as remote as that may seem, you have to eliminate that possibility and make sure there's no further threats. So hopefully they're at his or her house now. They may have identified a vehicle somewhere. He may have identification on him or her. So a lot of these things are happening simultaneously. It's happening with multiple agencies trying to work together at the same time, which can get fairly complex. Crime scene is pretty large. Go ahead.
Chris, I do want to jump in here quickly here because we are actually getting some more witness information that can maybe help us fill in the blanks here, try to figure out what exactly happened at this church this morning. And this is from the Star Tribune, a newspaper in Minneapolis, and they've been talking to people on the ground there at the scene, and several parents, including this mother who asked that she not be named, said that she saw bullet holes in the church windows, but she did not see the shooter. And then another witness here said that he heard 30 to 50 rounds of semi-automatic rifle fire for several minutes from their house, which was 2 blocks away. So you can imagine just how loud that gunfire was. And he said, "I know what gunfire sounds like," and I was shocked. And I said, "There is no way that could be gunfire. There was so much of it." And he adds, "It was sporadic. It seemed like a rifle. It certainly didn't sound like a handgun. He must have reloaded several times for sure." Chris, your reaction to that?
Yeah, it does appear that this person, was targeting this place at this time. I mean, he or she came dressed in black, equipped with a high-powered rifle with probably multiple magazines. So unfortunately, this comes, what comes to mind is what kind of evil person would target young children all congregated together worshiping in a Catholic mass?
I'm sorry to do this. We're gonna get to this news conference, which is starting now, and we are seeing the Minneapolis mayor there, Jacob Fry, right in front of the microphone. Let's listen.
There are no words that can capture the horror and the evil of this unspeakable act. Children are dead. There are families that have a deceased child. You cannot put into words the gravity, the tragedy, or the absolute pain of this situation. We are a Minneapolis family. But to everybody out there, do not think of these as just somebody else's kids. Those families are suffering immense pain right now. Think of this as if it were your own. Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary. And don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have, every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country. I'm so deeply saddened, and I'm so sorry to the families that I know are suffering right now. My ask is to everyone, stand by them. Love them. These families have forever been changed, and we've all been changed with them. We need to do everything possible to support them through this time. We have a family resource center that has been set up. I'm grateful for all of the law enforcement agencies from a number of different jurisdictions, all the different departmental support that we've received. They're going to be working tirelessly. There's also a family resource center that is being set up as we speak to make sure that we're there for everybody. Again, to the families that are suffering, to those that have experienced loss, I'm so deeply sorry. We're going to be with you every step of the way. We love you. This kind of act of evil should never happen, and it happens far too often. The chief will provide additional details.
My name is Brian O'Hara, B-R-I-A-N, O''H-A-R-A. I am the Minneapolis Police Chief. Earlier today, just before 8:30 a.m., our city experienced an unthinkable tragedy. Minneapolis police officers responded to a report of a shooting at a mass that was happening at the Annunciation Roman Catholic Church on the block behind me. This worship service was marking the first week of school for children that are attending the Annunciation Catholic School. During the mass, a gunman approached on the outside on the side of the building and began firing a rifle through the church windows towards the children sitting in the pews at the mass. Shooting through the windows, he struck children and worshipers that were inside the building. The shooter was armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. This was a deliberate act of violence against innocent children and other people worshiping. The sheer cruelty and cowardice of firing into a church full of children is absolutely incomprehensible. Police officers from the Minneapolis Police Department immediately responded, entered the church, and attempted to provide first aid and rescue some of the children that were hiding throughout the building, while other first responders came and EMS responded to rush victims to nearby hospitals. 2 young children, ages 8 and 10, were killed where they sat in the pews. Their parents have been notified. 17 other people were injured, 14 of them being children. 2 of those children are in critical condition. The coward who fired these shots ultimately took his own life in the rear of the church. Our hearts are broken for the families who have lost their children, for these young lives that are now fighting to recover, and for our entire community that has been so deeply traumatized by this senseless attack. We will stand together to protect our children, our schools, and our houses of worship. This deliberate act of violence is just a sign of cruelty that is beyond comprehension. Our hearts are broken for everyone that's been affected by this tragedy. As we begin the difficult path of healing, I want the community to know this, that even in the face of such evil, the Minneapolis Police Department and all of our law enforcement partners stand with our community. We stand with these families and with this parish. We will continue to be here for you. With that, the investigation is obviously in its preliminary stages, and I will attempt to take some questions to provide further information.
Chief, what can you tell us about the suspect in this case? How old was he? Any kind of motivation? Any notes or any other information that was left behind?
So we were looking, the question was, what can be said about the shooter? We believe it is one suspect, a sole shooter. We believe he is deceased. He is in his early 20s, does not have an extensive known criminal history. And we are looking through information left behind to try and determine some type of motive. Yeah. How many children? There were, I don't have an exact, the question was how many children at the school. There were dozens of children inside the mass at the time. I don't have an exact count. The children have been relocated into the school, which is where their families are reunifying with them. Reg.
Other than the weapons, was the shooter a student, former student? Was he a former employee?
The question was, do we know if the student was, if the shooter was a former school employee or a former student? We don't have that information.
Did you leave anything behind other than the weapons?
There's a vehicle. The question was anything left behind? There's a vehicle that we believe that the suspect used that is being searched, and we will be conducting other searches related to this. Inside the parking lot here. Yep.
There was some neighbors who said that the door to the church had been barricaded.
Yep.
Is that correct?
So the question was, neighbors had said that the door to the church had been barricaded. The shooter approached on one side of the church building, and on that side, at least 2 doors, it appears there had been like a 2x4 placed. So not all of the doors around the building, but on the side where the shooter did fire.
And
on the outside, yes. The question was there any explosives? There were reports of that. There were no explosives or improvised devices that we found. I do believe there was one, I guess you would call it a smoke bomb, like not an explosive, but a sort of a firework that would release smoke. The side that is closest to us, here, on this side, yep. I don't have specific information on that I can release. The question was, is he dead from a gunshot wound? The answer is yes. We believe he took his own life in the parking lot.
Was this outside or both inside that he was shooting?
The question was he shooting outside and inside? He was absolutely shooting outside of the building on the side of the church, inside through the windows. It appears he may have gone inside, but I don't believe we've located any casings inside the building. So I'm not certain if he fired also while inside. It appears, if not all, most of the shooting happened outside the building. So, yeah, Taylor's asking, is this related to any of the other shootings? This does not appear to be related to any other shooting in the city. The question was how many rounds? I would say it's in the dozens. We don't have an exact count. There's a sidewalk on the outside as well as a grassy area. So obviously we are going through and taking our time to process the scene. The question was he firing one weapon? We believe he had fired all three. He had a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol. Were the weapons, was he lawfully carrying the weapons? I don't have that information, and I don't have any information on any significant criminal history either.
Was he dressed at all in any tactical type of gear or anything?
It appeared he had some black clothing on, his cargo-type pants. I guess you could interpret that as, you know, however you like.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for helping us to get the information out today. We have a lot more work
questions?
that needs to be done. We will return back later today to provide more details as they become available, and we'll let you know how you can know about that in the moments to come. Thank you.
Okay.
How can the public help?
That's it. Thank you.
Well, you just heard there Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara giving a heartbreaking press conference after a mass shooting this morning at Annunciation Roman Catholic Church. Here's what we know. Now, according to Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, children have been killed. 2 young children aged 8 and 10 were killed as they sat in the pews of the church. Other children were injured, 2 of them in critical condition. According to law enforcement, in total, 17 injured. The shooter, armed with a rifle, a shotgun, and a pistol, targeted children through the church windows. There were dozens of children inside the church. The shooter also carried what police describe as some sort of smoke bomb. The shooter, law enforcement believes, took his own life after firing dozens of rounds. Hello, everyone. This is Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno, and also joining us today, Sandra Smith, co-anchor of America Reports, Rachel Campos-Duffy, Fox and Friends Weekend and Fox Noticias anchor host, Lisa Booth, Fox News political analyst, and Trey Gowdy, host of Sunday Night in America. Trey, I want to go through some of the details that we just learned from this press conference. As I mentioned, heartbreaking from the police chief there as he describes what they believe as a sole shooter, now deceased in his early 20s, who in the morning at 8:30 a.m. arrived to Annunciation Roman Catholic Church, approached on the outside side of the building and began firing, they believe, all 3 weapons of a rifle, a pistol, and a shotgun. The police chief saying the sheer cruelty and cowardice of firing into a church with children is incomprehensible. With law enforcement immediately responding, we now know that 2 children lost their lives, with 14 injured and 3 other adults injured, 2 of them critical. We know that law enforcement responded immediately. It is unsure yet whether the shooter indeed fired rounds inside the church. They have yet to find casings inside. There's a lot of questions unanswered at this point. Trey, with your vast experience as a federal prosecutor and serving in Congress, what are your thoughts today as we witness this tragedy unfold?
It is the softest of all targets. I mean, it literally rolls out the welcome mat for troubled people. It is the place for troubled people to go. So it is the softest of all targets and the most innocent of all victims, children. And so there are no words for the parents whose children were killed today or injured. And make no mistake, even those that survived will be impacted for the remainder of their lives. And this is more church or school shootings than the 5 of us can count. And so we do have to have a conversation about protecting soft targets, especially schools and churches where literally the whole purpose of the church is to welcome people who are down and out, who are depressed, who feel ostracized. That is the purpose of church. Having said that, there are no words. The only thing that can give us any modicum of peace at all is those two children are with the person who loved them the very most, the person who created them, that being Jesus. That is the only thing that can possibly give parents in the future any modicum of peace, that those children are literally with the person who loved them the very most. Aside from that, I'm glad the shooter is dead. I wish he had taken his life before he took the lives of innocent children.
And more on this heartbreaking tragedy. We'll bring in Bill Malusian, who is live with more. Bill.
Yeah, Emily, one of the biggest things that jumped out to me from that press conference is what the mayor said. He said these kids were literally praying when this happened. And then we heard the police chief say that the two victims, an 8-year-old child and a 10-year-old child, both died sitting in the pews as they were praying. Just horrible. We got more clarity on the numbers. Those two children passed away, 17 others injured, 14 of which are children, and 2 of those children in critical condition. And then they gave us some more details on how this happened. It doesn't sound like he physically got into the church and fired in there. It sounds like he was out in the parking lot, pulled out a rifle, and then just started spraying through the windows at dozens of children inside who, again, were all praying. The Annunciation Church, it's the first week of school. It's a Catholic church. It all happened at 8:30 in the morning, but police saying pretty much all the shell casings they found were outside in the parking lot. They say he may have gone inside the church at some point. They mentioned something about he went around to one side of the church and it was barricaded, potentially with a 2x4. We're going to have to get more details on that, but it sounds like at some point, maybe in between the firing, he went up to that church and there were people inside who tried to stop him from getting inside. But just think about it, guys. All these young children, we're talking elementary age school kids, sitting in church. It's quiet in there. They're praying. They have no idea what's outside. They're not looking out the windows, most likely. And then all of a sudden, from what we've heard with the witnesses, it was just boom, 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 dozens of gunshots, rifle rounds coming through the windows. And again, the horrible news that children have died as a result of this, 8 and 10 years old. We'll send it back to you.
For a moment as now, we are listening to the hospital press conference live.
This morning, that gave us time to mobilize all of our resources and prepare our teams. We are a level 1 trauma center, and we prepare and we train for this. Having said that these incidents are never easy. We've had 2 in the last 24 hours that have occurred, these mass casualty incidents. The one today, we received a total of 11 patients from this incident. 2 of them were adult patients, 9 pediatric patients. 4 of them required the operating room. And up to this point in time, there have been no fatalities related to any of those patients that were brought to our organization. I want to take a moment to tell you how proud I am to work for this organization and the teams that were involved, the resources, again, that were mobilized, our surgical colleagues, our medicine colleagues, our amazing nursing staff, our psychologists that help process these events for us, environmental services, all those involved. Hennepin EMS brought in all the critical patients from that scene to our organization, and we were very lucky to have 2 emergency medicine, emergency medical services directors that were on scene and able to provide us with really important information that, again, helped us to prepare for this event. So I don't have any individual or specific information about the patients at this time for you, so that's all I can share. Thank you for being here. Any questions?
You said they were in critical condition?
7 were brought in as critical patients, and at this time, I don't know the updates on what the conditions are of many of them. 4 of them required the operating room, as I said.
There was a baby.
There were, again, 9 of the 11 patients were pediatric ages. I can't remember the exact ages. I believe it's 6 all the way up to 14. That's the range.
Can you tell us a little bit about what types of teams you had working this morning, how many people it takes to treat a scene like that?
Yeah, you know, whenever that type of a page goes out, again, it really puts into motion a lot of a big response from all of the teams. And so we are, because we're a level 1 trauma center, We have to, mobilize certain types of resources like, operating rooms and the surgical services. We have to have emergency providers and nurses. We have to, mobilize things like the laboratory and the blood bank. So there's a lot of planning, and again, a lot of exercises we do throughout the year to prepare for these events. And unfortunately, we respond to many of them throughout the year.
Can you talk about the injuries at all, or any type of what you're seeing here with some of these patients?
I can't get into specifics, but we are dealing with gunshot wound injuries from apparently a high-velocity weapon. And, gunshot wounds can be very problematic because they can involve multiple body systems. And again, they require a lot of resources to manage. But again, we see a lot of gunshot wounds here at Hennepin Healthcare, and we're among the best in the nation every year at managing penetrating trauma. So we are used to seeing them.
Can you tell us where the status of the 11? Are any of them still in surgery?
I don't know the status of it. I can't share that with you at this time.
Was anyone shot more than one?
I can't share that information with you at this time.
Can you confirm the families of some of the victims that made their way here?
Yeah, we've had quite a bit of effort to stand up a reunification center across the street here in our clinical specialty care building. And so to my knowledge, I believe all or almost all of the families and loved ones have been reunited with patients and know their status.
Do you know if anyone is being treated at any other locations?
My understanding was we had a lot of the non-critical patients that went to Children's Hospital, and I believe one went to Masonic Children's Hospital as well. I don't know the status of any of those patients.
Can you speak to the toll it takes on physicians here to handle these types of cases and mass handle the case within hours?
Yeah, it does take a toll. Thank you for asking that. Asking that question. I think. Again, we have psychologists that we have dedicated to our emergency department to help with our providers and our nurses and other workers to manage these types of events. Again, we've had 2 mass casualty events happen in the last 24 hours. I mean, that does take a toll. But we also have to recognize that we are here as a critical resource for our community, and we have to take time to process, these the care that we deliver in these situations, and we have to be able to move forward because we are obviously needed.
And none of those patients have been discharged?
Not to my knowledge.
You said there were 11 total, and 9 of them were pediatrics ages 6 to 14, but 7 were in critical condition. Are all of those that are pediatric, those 6 to 14, are all of those in critical condition, or the ones that are older also in critical condition?
I don't want to misspeak here. I believe that all of the pediatric patients were the ones that were in a critical condition. Yes.
Did I get my numbers right?
You did.
Can you give us your specific title one more time, Doctor?
It's Thomas Wyatt, Chair of Emergency Medicine at Hennepin Healthcare.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You were just listening there to Dr. Thomas Wyatt, who's chairman of the emergency department at Hennepin Healthcare in Minneapolis, giving an update on this tragic shooting there at Annunciation Roman Catholic Church. This is a level 1 trauma center there, Hennepin, and he said we prepare and train for this, but it's never easy. And they were just reeling from a prior mass casualty incident within 24 hours. Today, they received 11 patients from the horrific shooting, 2 adults, 9 pediatric, ages 6 to 14, with the doctor reporting that 4 of those children required the operating room. He discussed that gunshots, particularly traumatic, require a lot of coordinative care, and due to their training, they were able to execute quite flawlessly this morning. He thanked that team, and he talked about the toll as well on the emergency services staff there at the hospital, saving lives that have dedicated psychologists as they too react and reel from this horrific trauma. Now for more, let's bring in Bill Malujan again, who's with live information. Bill.
Yeah, Emily, I think it just goes to show the great work that that hospital is doing, right? We heard them talk about the fact that they deal with a lot of gunshot wounds. They feel they're one of the best in the country with that. They say they've gotten 11 patients, and all of them are alive as of right now. So that's fantastic news. That's what we want to hear. 4 of them had surgery. But again, of those 11 patients that went to that hospital in particular, that doctor there reporting that all of them are still alive as of right now. Unfortunately, as we heard earlier, 2 children have passed away, ages 8 and 10. And we did hear the police say that this shooter, who, again, we have no idea on the shooter yet. We don't know anything about him, just that he's a young male in his early 20s who apparently brought 3 different weapons to carry out this attack. 1 a rifle, 1 a shotgun, and 1 a pistol, with police saying they believe he used all 3 during that attack. Again, they say most of the shell casings they found were out in the parking lot as he was shooting through the windows inside of that church. Again, Mass was ongoing when this shooting took place. You had a bunch of kids in there, dozens of them, according to police. And, you know, while we're reporting on this, I got a text from our colleague Jillian Turner. She's a new mom herself, and she's making the point that, look, these kids are going to, it's their first week of school. They should be worrying about, you know, making friends and meeting teachers and so many other things in life. But instead, whoever this scumbag was shows up outside and just a cowardly attack to shoot through windows at young children praying inside of a church, and then he apparently took his own life. Police saying they found him dead of what appears to be a self-inflicted gunshot wound in that parking lot. So nothing on any kind of motive yet. No further information on the shooter. That'll come out. They said they're conducting several different searches. They believe his car still is there in the parking lot. There had been initial reports there were some sort of explosives found. They said they didn't find any explosives, but they did find some sort of a, quote, a smoke bomb sort of thing, something that releases smoke. So now it's a waiting game, guys, to see what information comes out on this shooter. You can pretty much guarantee they're going to be at his house, at his address right now, conducting a search warrant there to see what he had at his house, talking to different family members, that sort of a thing. But the headline there from that press conference, 11 patients going to that hospital. Thankfully, all of them still alive as of now. Unfortunately, the bigger headline of the day, 2 children deceased as of right now, ages 8 and 10, with 17 others injured. Again, 14 of whom are young children. We'll send it back to you.
Just horrifying, Bill. Thank you. We're going to now bring in Chris Swecker, former assistant FBI director. Sir, your thoughts on this horrible tragedy?
Yeah, beyond tragic. I mean, this is not the first time we've seen someone target the most vulnerable of our population, as Trey Gowdy pointed out, our children, young children. I do school security assessments and church security assessments, and your worst nightmare is the point in the day when, if there is one, where they're all gathered in one place. Because if they're in their classrooms, they can be sealed off. Preferably, you know, ideally with one push of an access control button, you can lock them down. But in a situation like this, they are extremely vulnerable. And it appears that this person came from around the side of the building, just firing from the side, which gives him the best field of fire, if you will, which is, again, that takes a special kind of evil to do this sort of thing. I packed off or watched my 9 grandkids go off to school on Monday, and this is your worst nightmare as a parent, and we pray for those families. But this is, you know, this is another one of those situations where we're going to look back and see if there was any way this incident could have been prevented with perhaps an armed security guard out front or nearby. That's what I always recommend in my security assessments, as an off-duty police officer guarding the premises, no matter how, you know, martial that appearance that provides. It's something that we have to have in this day and age.
Thank you, and thank you for your service. Bringing it to you, Sandra. So we learned as much as we could about the shooter so far. Many questions unanswered. Law enforcement saying today that he either has a not extensive or known criminal history. They will try to determine the motive, obviously, and it's yet as known as well whether he was a former student or employee there of the Annunciation Church and School. They have not located any casings in the building. It's unknown whether he indeed penetrated and shot within. But for now, as Bill Malugin stated earlier, law enforcement believes he took his own life with his rifle there in the parking lot. Sandra.
Cruelty beyond comprehension, I believe, is what the police chief called it earlier. Obviously, key note is that he had no past criminal history, which obviously would bring up a lot of questions about his motive to carry out such a heinous crime and kill innocent little children. He did leave behind a car. You would imagine that that investigation is already knee-deep in that car looking for anything that he left behind. I want to focus on the first responders and the police who arrived at that scene and rushed into that church where, as you heard the police chief describe, the accounts of children hiding in the corners under the pews for them to go in, and they started administering first aid and rescue missions in the church while some of those children, sadly, were probably already bleeding out. We lost 2 of those little lives, 8 and 10 years old. We now know that 17 were brought to the hospital, 9 pediatric patients at that Hennepin Healthcare. Thank God. That is one of the largest emergency facilities in Minnesota. They are in good hands, 7 in critical condition, 4 in the operating room. We pray for those children, ages 6 to 14 years old. The head of the emergency department there, Thomas Wyatt, detailing how this is taking a toll, as you mentioned, Emily, even on the staff in that building. I just want to